My parents believed they'd raised a prodigy. One daughter was the golden child, the other was disposable. They drained my college fund to gamble on her career, then spent years bragging about their sacrifice. This is one of those revenge stories where family betrayal meets justice, and no one was ready for who really held the power. My parents didn't just favor my twin sister, they completely mortgaged my future to build hers, leaving me with nothing but debt and resentment. For years, they sat in the VIP box thinking her medals paid for their mansion, completely unaware that I was the one signing the checks. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand the specific kind of madness that infects a family when they think they've birthed a prodigy. We were 7 years old when Isabella picked up a tennis racket. I remember the day vividly because it was the last day my parents ever really looked at me. The coach told my father that Bella had natural mechanics, a fluid swing that you couldn't teach, and from that moment on, I ceased to be Amelia Castillo, their daughter. I became Amelia, the spare part, the ball girl, the shadow. We were twins, identical in genetics, but polar opposites in destiny. Bella was the star, the golden child, the ticket to a life of luxury my parents felt they deserved but hadn't earned. I was the bookworm, the quiet one, the one who was expected to understand that sacrifices had to be made. By the time we were 12, our lives were segregated. Bella went to a prestigious sports academy in Florida. I stayed in public school in Ohio. My parents moved with her, of course. I was left with my grandmother. They spun it as a necessity. They said, "Amelia, you have school and grandma needs help." But I knew the truth. I was baggage. I was an expense that didn't offer a return on investment. Every phone call revolved around Bella's ranking. Every holiday was dictated by the tournament schedule. If I got straight A's, my mother would vaguely nod and say, "That is nice, sweetie, but Bella just made the quarterfinals in extensive training. Do you know how much new rackets cost?" I learned to be small. I learned to be cheap. I stopped asking for clothes. I stopped asking for field trip money. I internalized the idea that my existence was a burden on the family budget, a budget that needed to be funneled entirely into Bella's coaching, nutrition, and travel. The breaking point, the moment my heart actually hardened into the stone that sits in my chest today, happened when I was 18. I had worked my fingers to the bone to get into a top-tier university. I had the grades, the extracurriculars, everything. I got accepted into my dream school, a prestigious university with a business program that could set me up for life. I was ecstatic. I remember calling my parents, my hands shaking with joy. I thought, "Finally, I have done something worthy of their attention," my father answered. I told him the news. There was a silence on the other end that lasted too long. Then he said, "Amelia, that is great, but we can't co-sign any loans, and there is no money for tuition." I felt the blood drain from my face. I reminded him about the college fund, the account that Grandma had started for both of us when we were born, the one they had promised was untouchable. "It is gone, Amelia," he said, his voice devoid of guilt. He sounded annoyed that I was even bringing it up. We had to liquidate it last year for Bella's private physiotherapist and the travel expenses for the European tour. It was an investment in the family's future. When Bella goes pro, everyone wins. You understand, don't you? I didn't understand. I screamed. I cried. I told them they stole from me. My mother took the phone. "Stop being selfish," she snapped. "Your sister is on the verge of greatness. She is going to be world #1. You are just going to college to read books. You can go to community college. It is the same thing. Don't ruin this for her with your jealousy." That was the last time I spoke to them as a daughter. I hung up the phone, packed my bags at my grandmother's house, and left. I didn't go to my dream school. I went to a state school on a partial scholarship and worked 3 jobs, waiting tables, filing papers, scrubbing floors. I graduated top of my class, fueled by a rage so pure it felt like high-octane gasoline in my veins. I didn't speak to them for 10 years. In those 10 years, Bella did become a star. Not number 1, but top 20. She was famous. She was on cereal boxes. She was making millions. And my parents? They were living the life. I would see them in magazines, sitting in the player's box, wearing Rolexes, dripping in designer clothes, giving interviews about how they sacrificed everything for their daughter's success. They were the architects of a champion. Meanwhile, I was grinding. I entered the world of sports management, not as an athlete, but as a shark. I started as an unpaid intern at a boutique agency. I fetched coffee, I organized files, but I had an instinct for numbers and a ruthlessness that terrified my peers. I saw inefficiencies where others saw tradition. I negotiated contracts that bled sponsors dry. I rose fast. By 26, I was a junior partner. By 28, I was head of the talent division. Then the opportunity of a lifetime appeared. The agency that represented my sister, Global Icon Management, was failing. Their leadership was old, their strategies were archaic, and they were bleeding cash. I went to my partners at my firm, Apex, and pitched a hostile takeover. It was risky, it was aggressive, and it was personal. They agreed. We bought Global Icon Management. We swallowed them whole. And just like that, I became the CEO of the agency that owned my sister's career. I remember the day I got the files. I sat in my corner office looking at the city skyline and opened the folder labeled Amelia Castillo. It was a disaster. On the surface, Bella was rich, but the financials told a different story. My parents had been draining her dry. They were listed as managers, consultants, and lifestyle coaches. They were drawing salaries that were 3 times the industry standard. They had company credit cards they treated like infinite money glitches. First-class flights to places where there were no tournaments, luxury villas, cars, jewelry. They were spending faster than Bella could earn. And Bella was slowing down. She was 28 now. Her knees were bad. She hadn't won a major title in 2 years. Her endorsements were up for renewal, and the sponsors were getting cold feet. The only reason the family hadn't collapsed into bankruptcy was that the previous management at Global Icon had been advancing them money against future earnings that were looking less and less likely to happen. My parents were living on a credit line that I now owned. I spent 6 months just watching. I let them dig the hole deeper. I approved the advances, signed off on the ridiculous expense reports. I wanted them to feel secure. I wanted them to feel invincible. Then I pulled the trigger. Bella's contract with the agency was up for renewal. My parents, acting as her managers, sent a demand letter. It was laughable. They wanted a 50% increase in their management fees, a guaranteed 5-year term, and a signing bonus of $2 million. If we didn't agree, they threatened to take Bella to a competitor. I told my assistant to set up a meeting. I told her to specify that the new CEO of Apex would be handling the negotiation personally. The meeting was set for a Tuesday morning. I made sure the boardroom was freezing cold. I sat at the head of the table, turning my chair away from the door so they would only see the back of my head when they walked in. I heard them enter. My father's voice was booming, complaining about the quality of the coffee in the waiting room. My mother was laughing, the sound of her bracelets clinking together. Bella wasn't there. They rarely brought her to the business meetings. They liked to handle the money. "Ah, you must be the new boss," my father said, his voice dripping with unearned confidence. "We don't have all day. We have a lunch reservation at Le Bernardin. Let's get the paperwork signed." I spun the chair around. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a lung. My father's smile froze, then slowly slid off his face like sludge. My mother dropped her handbag. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "Amelia?" my mother whispered. "Hello, Mother. Hello, Father." I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I looked at them with the same indifference they had shown me for 20 years. "What are you doing here?" my father stammered. He looked at my suit. Custom-tailored Italian silk. He looked at the office, the glass, the steel, the power. Are you an assistant here?" "I am the CEO, Robert. I own this building. I own this agency. And effectively, I own you." My mother let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "That is impossible. You work at a coffee shop or a library." I didn't bother correcting her. I just slid thick binder across the polished mahogany table. "Sit down," I commanded. It wasn't a request. The authority in my voice was something they had never heard before. They sat. They looked smaller now. The swagger was gone. I opened my own copy of the binder. "Let's look at the numbers, shall we?" I walked them through it, page by page. I showed them the dwindling tournament prize money, the sponsors who were dropping Bella because she wasn't performing, and then the spending. "You have spent $4 million in the last 18 months, I said. "Bella has earned 1.5. Do you see the problem?" My father turned red. "We have expenses. Maintaining a world-class athlete is expensive." I pointed to a line item. "A Bentley? A vacation home in Cabo? How do these help Bella's backhand?" They were silent. "Here is the reality," I said, leaning forward. "You are broke. Actually, you are worse than broke. You are in debt to this agency for $2.5 million in unrecouped advances. And since you signed personal guarantees on those advances, yes, I have the documents right here. If Bella leaves this agency, that debt becomes due immediately." My mother started to cry. Not genuine tears, but the weaponized tears she used to get her way. "Amelia, please, we are family. How can you be so cruel? We did everything for you girls." "Stop," I said. It was a quiet word, but it cut through her sobbing like a knife. "You did nothing for me. You stole my college fund. You abandoned me. You haven't called me in 10 years, unless you dialed the wrong number." "But we are your parents," my father shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You owe us respect." "I owe you nothing," I replied calmly. "But you owe me. Specifically, you owe my company millions." I stood up and walked to the window. "You threatened to leave. Go ahead. Walk out that door. I will sue you for the debt. I will seize the mansion, the cars, the jewelry. I will leave you with absolutely nothing. Bella will be bankrupt by association. Her career will be over." They were trembling. The reality of their position was finally sinking in. They were trapped. They had spent years thinking they were the kings of the world, only to find out they were playing in my sandbox. "What do you want?" my father asked, his voice defeated. "Do you want money? We can work something out." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "I have money. I have more money than you could ever dream of. I don't want your money." "Then what?" my mother asked. "I want the truth." I walked back to the table and placed a single sheet of paper in front of them. "Tomorrow morning, there will be a press conference to announce Bella's contract renewal. You will both be there, and you will read this statement." My father picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. He read it, and his face went pale. "We can't say this. This is humiliating." "It is the truth," I said. The statement was simple. It was an admission. It detailed how they had misappropriated funds. It detailed how they had sacrificed one daughter to gamble on the other. It gave credit for their lifestyle not to their management skills, but to the generosity of the agency and the daughter they had shunned. It was a public admission that they were frauds, and that I, Amelia Castillo, was the only reason they weren't on the street. "You have two choices," I said. "Read the statement, and I restructure the debt. I will put Bella on a strict budget, one that actually supports her training and not your lifestyle. You will keep the house, but the credit cards are cut up. You retire from management. You become simply parents. Or refuse, and I ruin you. By noon tomorrow, the lawsuits will be filed." They looked at each other. They looked for an escape, a way to spin this, but there was none. I had the receipts. I had the leverage. They signed the agreement. The press conference was the most satisfying moment of my life. The room was packed with sports journalists. Cameras were flashing. My sister sat there, looking confused and tired. She knew things were bad, but she didn't know the extent of it until I had briefed her an hour prior. To her credit, Bella didn't fight me. She was relieved. She had been drowning under the pressure of supporting them for years, too afraid to speak up. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and shame. Then my parents stepped up to the podium. My father looked 10 years older than he had the day before. He cleared his throat. He looked at the paper, then at me standing in the wings. I didn't blink. He began to read. "We would like to make a statement regarding the management of Isabella's career," he stammered. "Over the years, we have made financial decisions that were detrimental to our daughter's future." The cameras clicked furiously. This was not the usual fluff piece. This was blood in the water. "We also wish to acknowledge," my mother continued, her voice trembling, "that our lifestyle has been sustained not by our own acumen, but by the financial support of Apex Management and specifically," she choked on the words, "specifically the CEO, our daughter, Amelia Castillo. We admit that we failed Amelia as parents. We sacrificed her education and her well-being. We are only here today because she has chosen to show us mercy we do not deserve." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. The reporters were stunned. The great Castillo parents, the self-proclaimed architects of success, were admitting they were leeches who had abandoned one child to exploit the other. They finished the statement and stepped back, heads bowed. They didn't look like VIPs anymore. They looked like what they were, small, greedy people who had been caught. I walked out onto the stage then. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I shook Bella's hand. I signed the contract. I looked at the cameras and said, "Apex Management is dedicated to protecting our athletes, even from their own families. We are cleaning house. Thank you." After that day, the dynamic changed forever. My parents retreated to the mansion, but it wasn't theirs anymore. It was held in a trust controlled by me. They get a monthly stipend, enough to live comfortably, but not enough for Lebanardan or Bentleys. They are on an allowance, like children. Bella fired them as managers officially. She is training again, really training, without the pressure of funding their shopping addictions. She calls me once a week. We are slowly, tentatively, learning to be sisters. She apologized for not standing up for me when we were kids. She said she was brainwashed. I believe her. As for my parents, they try to call me sometimes. They leave voicemails about family dinners or holidays. I don't answer. They have their allowance. They have their roof. That is more than they gave me when I was 18. Sometimes I see them on TV at the smaller tournaments Bella plays now. They sit in the regular seats, they don't wear Rolexes, and every time the camera pans to them, they look tired. They look at the VIP box, the glass-enclosed luxury suite high above the court, and they know who is sitting there. They know that the daughter they threw away is the one looking down on them. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. I just forced them to live in the reality they created, while I live in the empire I built from the scraps they left behind. And let me tell you, the view from the top is spectacular. If you believe revenge is meaningless without justice, make sure to like and subscribe. More stories like this are coming.